Hello, Ways and Means. It is still Thursday, January 15th. It is 4:03 and we are on our last piece of testimony for the day. We're hearing the report of the State Aid for School Construction Working Group. I think we imagined we were going to get started on this a little bit earlier. Please do not worry. This is not the last time we will talk about this. It's just the first time we will talk about this. And I hope that our two witnesses perhaps can join us again in the future when we go a little bit, we have a chance to go a little bit deeper. But thought it would be helpful to start with an overview of the work that you all were able to do. I know that this is maybe the third or fourth iteration of a school construction working group that we have had. And this committee is particularly interested in existing debt as we work towards sort of solutions for managing that, and then maybe transitioning that into a path forward for school construction. So I'll turn the floor over to you two, and thank you very much for your patience and for joining us.
You're welcome. Oh, go ahead, Mike. So anyways, just I reluctantly got to chair the committee for a little bit. It was a really interesting group. There was a lot of information. We did not have a lot of time to work on this. So what we did was we focused on your request, the request of the legislature to talk about the legacy debt. And I think I'm gonna go really quick and just say we did not really have any answer. We felt we gave some thoughts and some ideas and some considerations for the legislature to use if they should decide to do some consolidation. We felt that I think a real quick summary, and then I'm going to let Michael speak to most of it because a lot of it came from him. Is when you look at the legacy debt, it is not it wasn't it shouldn't be a huge roadblock to having some consolidation, and it shouldn't be thought of as a bad thing, because if there is a lot of the more recent debt is stuff, it was to help out with some construction and better facilities that could maybe work into the future, and also instead of being an unknown, it's a known debt for what you have. The report I think we had 5 or 6 considerations, but has the committee's had a chance to review the report or at least look at the summary? And I'm going to defer to Michael to talk about the legacy debt. A lot of it it came from him and his research. And then if there's any other questions, I'll jump in, but I'm going to mute myself and let Michael take over.
Before you mute yourself, will you introduce yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is
It's
Rich
okay.
Werner. My name is Rich Werner. I live in Dover, and I am on this state school board, and I was asked by the chair of the state school board, to serve on this committee. I from Dover. Dover had some debt. We were, I think, one of the original groups that borrowed money back in the 70s for a building that we're still utilizing. Plus, we did a pretty big addition in the early 90s that we paid off through Act 60. And I have a construction company and a property management. We do construction excavating, not on a big commercial place, but for several of the resorts and condos. So I do have some building experience and some experience with the finances of that.
Great. Thank you so much. It's really appreciate you joining us and what you summarized. And often a task force has a very strong singular recommendation, and frankly, the legislature often goes another direction. And so the most valuable thing we can actually be offered is sort of those considerations. They give us a lot to work with. So I appreciate that you have them, and I look forward to hearing more from Michael.
Yeah, and just so you know, too, we will be meeting shortly to kind of go now in the future what there would be for recommendations, and we'll start working on that, later this winter, and we will hopefully have some more stuff for you towards the end of your session.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and as Rich mentioned, we tried to comprehensively lay out the options for sort of addressing legacy debt. Not all of them are created equal. I think you can kind of see that in the pros and cons that are associated with each option. Those that have more pros are obviously more favorable. So I'll spend a moment kind of at the end of these slides talking about the three that are probably most feasible. But I thought it'd be useful to give a little bit of background to contextualize how big this issue is, which I think in the scope of a very, very large ed fund is actually quite modest.
I think that's a
So
very exciting part of your findings.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, sometimes it's good to just put the numbers on paper. So if I'm allowed here, I'll share my slides that I
Portia?
believe you all have.
Oh, he does.
And there's a few points here that speak to some of what Rich just said. So I've shared this for 5 years now, but this is school construction, the history of school construction as known by the Bond Bank, plus Burlington and Winooski. And what you see in this is that the orange line represents inflation adjusted numbers, adjusted for CPI, not necessarily construction inflation, which might make this look a little bit different, but a huge amount of building back in the 70s. And then, as Rich mentioned, in the 90s, my understanding is there's some growth in the school age population that time. There was aid, and there was a decent amount of construction at that point. So, sort of David Epstein, who also worked with us, characterizes this as schools built in the 70s, or rather 60s and 70s. Then you have additions in the 90s, and then just not that much activity since then, other than in recent years, which are that activity is obviously very highly concentrated. To Rich, the point, Rich, I think another really key finding or discussion we had as a group was this concept that debt is sort of not necessarily a negative is not a negative value. Like if you have debt, that means that likely the building was being kept up with in terms of repair, replacement, modifications for modern student learning. And one of the reasons that this is so valuable is demonstrated by this chart, which is Northeastern, but this is producer price index for non-residential construction goods. And so it's not a perfect index as to what construction looks like in Vermont. In fact, it probably underestimates the scale of the change that we've had, but it certainly shows you here. The first conversation I had on this topic was February 2020, right before COVID, or rather right before the declaration of the pandemic. And since that time, prices by this index are at 43%. So if you had taken out debt, back in 2019, you would have paid a fraction of what you'd be paying today for the exact same project. And so that's why a lot of this legacy debt is actually, again, kind of a good thing in a perverse way. So here's a look at the bond bank in terms of what this is, what all of our data is showing. It's showing bond deals that we're aware of that are in our portfolio, plus Winooski and Burlington. To the extent they have, there's school districts out there that have like loans with private banks. We're not aware. We don't track that necessarily. Although I think this represents 95+% of what's out there. But the first graph here, what you're
Hey, Michael,
seeing. Yep, go ahead.
do you mind explaining why Winooski and Burlington are sort of slightly outside of the data set, just for, I feel like that's helpful context for folks.
Yeah, so with Winooski's project, they took a loan with USDA that they received their commitment letter on that right around February, March 2020, which or actually that might have been a little bit later, but regardless, their rate is less than 3%, and they received a forward commitment. So that was a really excellent outcome for them. So their construction loan is with USDA. Burlington's school district issues, they're a component unit of the city of Burlington. So they issue their bonds through the city of Burlington, which has a very good rating. And so for autonomy, there's no reason that they necessarily need to use the bond bank. And so they sort of do their own debt. And then for everyone else, the bond bank is helping them finance their bond.
Thanks.
So this picture is debt service over time. The 2026 numbers are a little bit misleading. There was, out of the Great Recession, some special bond programs that had a sinking fund and sort of a bullet maturity. So that kind of don't pay attention to that, because there are funds on hand to pay that. That would have already been part of Ed Fund payments. But what you see here is just under $50 million in annual debt service for outstanding debt at this date and time. And I think this is really important because it obviously compares to 1.6 billion in Ed Fund sort of operating related costs. And it's just really a fraction. And in fact, in our portfolio, the median amount of budget that is occupied by debt service is like 1.8% or so. And nationally, for similarly sized school districts, that's about 5.5%. So it doesn't tell us anything we know other than that, we have underinvestment in these facilities.
So
This
what
is a
is
look.
the,
Yep, go ahead.
are you about to talk about what annual payments look like? Is that what this next chart is?
That's what this is. This is
Okay,
annual
great. Thank you.
aggregate annual payments. The blue is Chittenden, and it's organized by county. So the
Okay.
blue is Chittenden County, which is no surprise. That's where Burlington, Winooski, Milton, Colchester have all passed bonds successfully. These are just the raw numbers. And then I thought this was pretty interesting. We spent some time talking about this summary. So it's a comparison of debt per county as compared to school age population in that county. And again, we already have intuition around this. Chittenden County sort of jumps off the map, 68% of the outstanding debt compared to 25% of the population. But at the same time, like the denominator in this should be a lot higher because we have so much underinvestment in schools. So Chittenden County is probably an example where this is what it looks like when you're keeping up with facilities, and everywhere else is not. There's some outliers in Franklin County due to some successful passages of bonds there, and then again in Windsor County as well. But what I think I'd like the committee to focus on is the middle column here. So if you remove the 10 largest debtors that from our analysis, your residual is only $72 million. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about when we talk about legacy debt. You sort of remove Burlington, Winooski, CVU, and you're just not left with that much that is remaining that would be up for consideration. And so I think that was a really important part of this analysis. And I don't want to sort of diminish the materiality of $72 million. But again, in the context of an annual $1.6 billion Ed Fund, that's quite small. And so that yep, go ahead.
Overlaying the removing the 10 largest debtors with how soon that debt will be retired?
We can kind of see that up here. So
I'm sorry, it's the end of the day, so my thoughts are not very linear.
Yeah, so definitely, I think the point you're sort of thinking about here is outside of the 10 largest debtors, does that for that 72 million, does that mature in relatively short term? And the answer is yes. And that is demonstrated here. So green and blue are Chittenden County and Franklin County, which are newer projects, and you see they go out much further than everything else. And so these other colors that are sort of stacked up here, you see most of it's pretty much amortized by 2036 or so. So to your point,
Okay.
yeah, that pays off relatively soon.
Thank you.
And our school district debt generally amortizes very quickly. We see borrowers typically do 20 to 25 years, and up until recently, that was mostly level principal payments. So they're paying the same amount of principal each year, and debt service step down each year, which is why you see the shape of this going downwards. So It all amortizes, including Burlington. Burlington, I think only went out 20 years with their debt issuance, and so that amortizes quite quickly as well.
Michael, on this slide that you have right there in front of you, nothing, is that one by town or by school district?
This is an interesting one. So the one caveat to the point we made about debt being good given construction cost inflation is that the vintage of the debt does kind of matter. So, you know, if you have debt outstanding that was issued 15 years ago, that's like pretty good, but you've probably mostly depreciated those assets that you financed. Whereas if you issued debt 4 years ago, that's really terrific. That's kind of the best situation. And so thinking about different ways in if you know, if it was something you wanted to pursue to help out or remove or defease legacy debt, looking at the vintage of the debt might be one methodology for that. And so that's what this demonstrates. You'll see in the recommendations, one of the interesting findings we have is that if you were just to say, okay, listen, we're just going to eliminate up to $5 million of debt for each school district as a equitable, easy to understand policy, that cost would be about $53 million and would eliminate the debt from all but 13 districts. And it just speaks to the fact that there's not that much debt, and that actually is shown here. There's not that much debt on the balance sheet of most school districts, and a little kind of goes a long ways. Like the previous task force reports that have been out there, or committees, or whatever you want to call them. Schools letting out. So one thing that is very important is that, and the treasurer's office made this point and has made this point previously, is that we don't think it's appropriate. You know, we've talked sort of about how the bond bank can leverage the state ratings quite a bit more than the state can directly. And so and that goes both for new construction as well as that. Hang on.
Yeah, anyone is welcome on this call with us. It is a public meeting. Children, pets,
Yeah,
whatever.
there's some public comment here. Hey, Greta, I'm on the call. Okay, sorry. So this issue is quite personal for me. Hey, girls, thanks. And so sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. And so it's important that it be an appropriation rather than debt-sponsored payoff of any legacy debt. So I think that just about covers it. I'm obviously, I'll answer questions, but might go on mute at this point.
Hey, Michael, before you move on, yeah. If Colchester
Yes.
shows what, 32 million in debt, but they passed their bond vote for 100 million. So is that just how much they've issued so far?
That's right. They're phasing the project, and so we'll see that over time.
Okay. So how long are they phasing it? 2-3 years? What does it look like?
I think it's longer than I think. I'm going off memory here, but I think it's 4 to 5 years. And
Okay.
it's a little bit different because it's a campus situation, whereas Burlington was just, you know, one, and Winooski were both kind of one facility.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So in the previous slide where you had debt by school district, it was also not included in that, is that right? By county?
That's right. Yeah, it's not. This is only issued
Existing.
debt, so not
Okay.
authorized but unissued.
All right, thank you.
Michael, did the committee talk about the inventory of sort of construction need and how relevant it might or might not be in this current moment?
Well, we're really thinking about, and this might be a question for Rich, but really thinking about that, addressing that next. This was the first charge of the legislature. I think I would observe that one of the challenges for us is not exactly knowing what the policy direction is on new construction, be it Rhode Island, I believe, had a mantra of newer and fewer, or, you know, sort of like whatever the policy objective is. I think that would inform how you sort of think about prioritizing certain projects. The bond bank is very mechanical in terms of our interests. We want to see lowest cost. We want to see the state's rating be protected. And so those are our considerations, but that is one observation that came out of some of the preliminary discussions.
Thank you. I feel like I saw a hand, and now I don't remember. Do you still have a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
to sure I'll ask it. So, okay, thank you very much. So, the percentage of debt that Vermont has as a whole compared to the amount that we're spending in the ed fund every year. Did I understand you saying we're kind of under investing in our school buildings?
For sure. I think that's, I can definitely make that conclusion, both from the
I
debt
don't think that's a
numbers.
controversial opinion.
Yeah, as well as
Yeah.
I was going to say the facilities assessment study from a few years ago.
So my follow-up question to that are there statistics that you have, like a percent that seems more reasonable, or what?
Yeah, I
What's
mentioned,
What
I
would-
briefly mentioned it. But for similarly sized schools, national medians from Moody's, who's a rating agency, around 5.5% of budget that is occupied by debt service, and we're for those that have debt, which is not every district, we're at less than 2%.
That's right, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both so much. Enjoy your families and your office mates, and I think we'll have you back soon, and really grateful for all the work that you have done and are continuing to do. Thank you.
Great,
you.
always happy to